So, I'm a musician, which means I'm contractually obligated to say that Rhythm Heaven is one of the greatest game franchises to exist.
I love Rhythm Heaven.
It's a real music lover's rhythm game. It's a little on the easy side, but this just makes it so the only barrier to completion is feeling the groove of the tunes. There's also, probably, never going to be another Rhythm Heaven game, so a few folks are trying to make their own spiritual successors. This is really cool and good, generally, but Half Asleep's attempt at the genre falls short of its inspiration in a few key ways. Melatonin is a chill-hop-inspired derivative of Rhythm Heaven, less cutesy and more vibey. The color palette is oppressively pastel pink, and the soundtrack is pretty much entirely beats to relax/study to. Even if this particular genre and aesthetic is fighting an uphill battle for me personally, I appreciate that the game is willing to go so hard on aping Rhythm Heaven in its gameplay and structure, but utilizes it for a new tone and feel. It makes Rhythm Heaven-like into more of a legitimate subgenre of rhythm games. I'm glad it exists, but I didn't like it. Firstly, Melatonin is pretty easy, which isn't a problem on its own. It's a vibe game, you can play it before bed, it's a breezy experience that comes and goes, but it's really easy, like a significant amount easier than any Rhythm Heaven game. And again, I think that Rhythm Heaven's low difficulty is a point in its favor, so my problem isn't simply that I wasn't challenged enough. The problem here is that Melatonin is simplistic to the point of sacrificing its musicality. The first 8 minigames in Rhythm Heaven Fever slowly introduce the concept of syncopation. All inputs are rotely on beat until Double Date, minigame 4, with its one cheeky little offbeat soccer ball. 4 minigames later, you're on Monkey Watch, and you gotta hit funky offbeats constantly. By the time you get to the last couple of minigames, you'd better have internalized the concept, or Packing Pests 2 will fuck your shit up. But this doesn't just make the game more challenging and engaging, it makes the music catchier. Like, the game had to teach you about syncopation, that's where the bounce is. Melatonin, by contrast, introduces the concept of syncopated rhythms. Never. If there's an 8th note, it's subservient to a quarter note right next to it. The most complicated pattern you'll ever encounter is the occasional doot-doot-doot. It's a game where you never grow out of clapping on 1 and 3. But this is combined with a few weirdly hard-to-interpret cues. Time asks you to listen carefully for 2 very similar sound cues to determine if the clock is emerging from the portal for you to hit it or not, and you only have half a beat to react. In a lot of cases, the cues are overwhelmed by the music, and you often need to go by visuals alone, but this is not always practical. This particular combination of stilted, simplistic beats and cues that are either intentionally obscured or just sloppily implemented makes for a decidedly unchill gaming experience. Okay, speaking of chill, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to make of this game's theming. Like, Rhythm Heaven is very thematically transparent. It's about rhythm, musical performance. Its most outlandish concepts are made intuitive by just putting you in an ensemble. Donk Donk is almost complete nonsense, but all you gotta know is that you're one of 3 guys. You're playing your part in the piece. There's almost always some other agent setting the pace of the performance, other musicians, or some entity playing the conductor role.
The characters, when you mess up, make this expression like, what are you doing?
Melatonin takes place in a dreamscape. The levels are named after subjects of modern living that one might dream about. I feel like this goes a long way to explaining why outlandish things are happening on screen without doing anything to explain why everything needs to occur on a steady pulse. Like, what happens if you don't swipe your card at the right time? Furthermore, why is this game so miserable? Over half the levels feel like you're taking part in a stress dream. Themes of work, money, in exercise, the poor guy is just blankly staring across the room at an idealized version of himself, desperately copying his moves to a T. I want to say this game is about this young man's struggles, or about the roteness of daily living, the Industrial Revolution and its consequences, etc., but it's so vague. With the striking exception of the past minigame, where the beat selects Polaroid photos for you to burn, there's hardly anything for me to latch onto with regards to character conflict, except for a nebulous sense of, wow, relatable. And it's not a consistent theme either. The only consistent thing here is the musical tone and color palette. The crushing monotony of cubicle work is presented with exactly the same chill beats brush as the one where you chomp food tossed from living pizza boxes. You know what? This smells a bit like A Little to the Left, a puzzle game that I haven't played and probably never will because it's evil and I hate it. Errant Signal has a great short video about it. It's essentially a wholesome game about tidying things up, and possibly also an unbearably sinister look into the mind of someone cursed with a compulsive, pathological need for order in a chaotic world. It is a straight-up OCD simulator, and I don't mean that in the pop culture way, I mean it in the I need to wash my paws again or I'll abuse a child way. Melatonin isn't about dreams. It's actually a lot more like like when my OCD wakes me up at night with random, nondescript mental tasks and rituals I have to perform in my head without being conscious enough to know that's what's happening. That's what I feel from a game that depicts dreams as repetitive, monotonous rhythm gaming. This isn't sleepy, it's insomniac. Ironically, when I take melatonin before bed, it actually makes this phenomenon worse, so maybe this game is actually genius. I don't know. Thanks for